Good afternoon, YouTube pipers. Double O Pipe here, aka Rick. My new Brigham. I can't make out what that says, just too tiny. But at any rate, this is the one that I got that was sent to my daughter by mistake. And it took 2 weeks. 2 weeks to get here instead of 2 days as it normally used to when I ordered from smokingpipes.com. And I'm going to add to this some Carter Hall. Pardon me, excuse me, that was pretty close to being rude. I want to mention this because I tried it. Wasn't crazy about the cut because it was kind of hard to put it into the pipe with that cut. And then when I smoked it, it brought back memories of whenever I tried to smoke Chesterfield cigarettes. It just, my throat was raw for the rest of the day, so that's not one I will be smoking again. I'm sorry. It wasn't my bowl of tobacco. Nope, just wasn't my nope, didn't like it. So I now have 2 pouches of that I will never smoke. I won't even try it later. I remember how those Chesterfields just tore my throat up. And the action was the same with that, and I'm not going through that again. So I will stick to my Carter Hall. Well, it appears everybody has big plans for Halloween. Most people have had a good Halloween story. But I don't have a Halloween story. Since it's October, I've been reminded that every year during October, the fair, the county fair, would come to Charleston. When I was young, my dad would go every year and sign up for the drawing for a car. Every year he would sign up. Every year he knew he was going to win. Never won. But he did pay his dollar or whatever it was to sign up, hoping to win. And we would stay until the end of the night whenever they had the drawing. Once that was over, he was ready to go. Well, excuse me again. I was close to being a teenager. I don't think I was a teenager yet. but maybe a year off. And I wanted to ask my dad if I could take somebody to the fair when we went. It was always kind of difficult to ask my dad anything because it just was. I don't know why. But this particular day, I had mustered up the courage. And I came into the house, and my mother was in the kitchen. I walked in there to see what was for dinner. I knew what was for dinner because I knew what day of the week it was. We would have certain things on certain days of the week. I think it was what the what the income would allow. I don't think it was anything in particular other than that. But anyway, after I walked in there, I asked her if I could help her set the table or whatever. And she said, well, ask your dad if he wants to eat at the table or in the TV room. So I went and asked him, and he said TV room. So I got out the TV trays. And when it was time to put the meal on the plates, I went in and helped my mother do that. And we set the plates on the TV trays, sat down to eat while the news was on. Finished eating, and I picked up the plates and took them into the kitchen, scraped them out and put them in the sink, moved the TV trays, and waited until the news was over. And when it was over, my dad was released from the TV because when he was watching the news, it was like a magnet. You couldn't move him. But I said, Dad, and he said, what is it, son? I said, I'd like to ask you a question. And he said, well, go ahead. I said, we're going to the fair this year, aren't we? And he said, of course we are. I got to sign up for that car. I'm going to win this year. And I said, okay, I was wondering, could I take somebody with me? And he said, Richard, yeah, go ahead and give him a call. We can, if it's okay with his parents, we can do it. I said, no, not Richard. There's a girl I know at school that I would like to take. And he said, a girl? And my mother came into the room and she said, a girl? And I said, yeah, a girl. Would it be all right if I did? He said, sure, you can ask her. Have you already asked her? I said, no, I wanted to make sure it'd be okay. So he said, yeah, you better go call her, make sure that she can go. And I said, okay. So I went into where the phone was and sat down. And reached for it. And I just broke out in a heavy sweat, and my breathing got short, and my head got light, and I put it in between my knees and sat like that for a little bit. And I sat back up, and I got the number I had written on a piece of paper and flattened it out in front of me, and picked up the phone. Made the decision, yeah, I got to call now. And I dialed the number that I read on the paper, sat there and waited. It rang 3 times, and I hung it up real fast because I was just too scared to ask her. I was a pretty shy kid. And this girl had really caught my fancy. I mean, she was a brunette, pretty brown eyes. I could just drift off thinking about her because she was so pretty. But anyway, I started to get up and not call, and my mother came in and said, "Something wrong?" I said, "Well, I just can't seem to get up the nerve to call." She said, "Well, she's not going to bite you. Just sit down, take a few breaths, pick up the phone and dial it and talk to her." So I said, "Okay." So I sat there, took a few breaths, picked up the phone, dialed the number. It rang once, and I was about to put it back in the cradle whenever she answered, or the phone picked up. And it was her voice, just floated across the thing. "Hello?" I couldn't talk. My mouth was too dry. I couldn't catch my breath. She said, "Hello? Hello? Is anybody there?" And I tried to say, "Yes, I'm here." And she said, "Hello? Answer, please, because I'm going to hang up if you don't." So I said, "Yes, would you like to go to the fair this year with me?" And on the other end of the line, she says, "Ricky? Is this Ricky?" I said, "Yeah. Would you like to go to the fair with me?" She said, "Well, I have to ask my parents. Hang on for a minute." So she was off, and my mind just, as it always did, and things like that, just drifted off. And I saw us hand in hand walking toward a cottage with a white picket fence and a beautiful green lawn with daisies growing up next to the house and the sun in the sky and the birds singing. And she came back to the phone. She said, "My parents said it's okay." And woof, I was back in my body again. And I said, "You mean you can go? You'll go with me?" She said, "Yes." So I sat there and talked to her for a little bit. Told her when we would pick her up, or, all the information she needed. And she said, "Okay." And I said, "All right, I'll talk to you in school then." And I hung up. And I sat there breathing, just trying to catch my breath. This gorgeous girl was now going with me. I was going to be on a date. That meant I was grown up. Wow. So anyway, I walked back in there, kind of walking on air, and she said she'd go with me. She said she'd go with me. And my dad said, "You got any money?" I said, "Money?" I said, "Yeah, I got a couple of bucks in my piggy bank." He said, "Well, when you go on a date, it's usually typical that the guy pays for everything." He said, "Fair's not cheap, you know." I said, "No, I hadn't even thought about that." I said, "Will you lend me some money?" He said, "I saw how you helped your mom today. If you can do chores around the house, helping her and everything during the week, we'll see what we can do for you." And I said, "Okay." So that week went by. I helped out as much as I could. And then the day came when we were going to go to the fair. And I was petrified because we were going to go pick up my date. I'll tell you, when you're that young, terror is something that's unknown, but it's there, and it freezes you, especially when you're shy and it's your first attempt at taking a girl out. I mean, the guys still mortified you if you were talking to a girl in school, so you had to talk to them on the sly so that your friends wouldn't see you or they would pick on you. I mean, it was that age. So terror is in the eyes of the beholder, I guess. Well, we all got in the car. We were driving. He said, "You know where she lives?" And I said, "Yeah, I can show you." And I told him where to go, and he went. And I said, that's it. Stop right up there." And he said, "Okay." And he stopped in front of our house. And once again, I was frozen. I couldn't move. I just couldn't move. And Dad said, "You got to go up to the door to get her, you know." I said, "I know. I'm trying to get out of the car." And he said, "You don't want me to go up and get her, do you? I mean, that just wouldn't look right for you, son." I said, "No, I want to do it. I'm just having trouble getting out of the car." So I opened the door. And I put my feet out the door and put one on the ground and tried to follow it with the other and held onto the door as I was sliding out of the seat. And I closed the door and I looked up and I had to walk, I know, 40 feet to get to the door. And once again, I couldn't move. And Dad said, "I'll go up and get her if you want me to." I said, "No, I'm going." So I started walking. I got up to the door and I was reaching to hit the bell and the door opened wide and there she was. She said, "I thought you were never going to come up here." I said, "Are you ready?" I can't get this thing to light. And she said, my parents want to meet you first." And I said, "Do we have to do that?" And she said, and she grabbed my hand and pulled me in. And the house lights were on, and I felt like I was under a sun lamp or something and getting the third degree. And I put my hand up like that, and her father grabbed my hand and said, "Good to meet you, Ricky, isn't it?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And I was thinking to myself, the third degree? Why am I getting the third degree? And he said, "You're going to make sure my little girl has a good time, aren't you?" And I'm thinking to myself, how can I be assured of that? I'm going to do the best I can, but I don't know how she's going to react to it. He said, "I want her back at a reasonable time, too." And I said, "Well, my dad's going to wait until the drawing for the car is over. I'm not sure what time that is." So he said, "Okay, I'll go out and talk to him and ask him." And so I'd gotten through that. And she was getting her coat, and I helped her on with it, and we walked out to the car. I opened the back door, and she got in, and I slid in beside her and closed the door. And my dad and her dad finished talking, and they shook hands and said, "All right, we can go now." As we drove off, I was sitting there thinking, I'm on a date. I'm on a real date. My girlfriend's right here. And my mind just drifted off to that little cottage by the seashore until my mother said, "Well, it looks like our son isn't going to introduce you, so let me introduce myself and his dad to you." And she started talking with them. And I was sitting there. I just didn't know what to say. And we finally got to the fair. We got to the fair, walked through the door, or the gate. And the first thing we saw was the balloons on a cork board that you throw darts at. I said, "Can I try that, Dad? I want to see if I can win something for her." And he said, "Okay." So we walked over there and gave him $1, and I threw a dart, missed, threw a second dart. It knocked the balloon out of the way without piercing it. And the third one I threw, a gust of wind took the balloon away and went right into the cork board again. And the guy behind the counter said, "Well, son, you can try one more time. I know your girlfriend there would love to have one of these stuffed animals." I said, "Can I try it again, Dad?" He gave him $1. Tried it again, missed all three again. Same thing. The guy behind the counter says, "Another $1 gets you three more chances." And I said, "Can I try it?" He said, "You don't want to waste all the time or money on this. There's so much to do out there. Let's go forward." And he said, "What's next?" And my date said, "The Ferris Wheel." And I froze. The Ferris Wheel was something I did not allow to exist in my mind. I never got on the Ferris Wheel. Never wanted to be on the Ferris Wheel. Heights terrified me, and I didn't want anything to do with it. But what could I do? That's what first thing she wanted to do. So Dad said, "Okay, let's go over here and get my ticket for the car, and then we'll go to the Ferris Wheel." So they took off, and I was just rooted to the ground. I had to pull my feet up pull those roots out of the ground to get moving. And we walked over to the place. Dad bought his ticket and said, "I'm going to win this year." Put it in his pocket. And he said, "Okay, Ferris Wheel, here we come." And I looked over there, and there it was, this giant wheel. And I looked up at the top, and it was so far up into the sky, I just couldn't even imagine being up there. And we walked toward it, and we walked toward it. My heart was just going thumpada, 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 and the sweat had broken out on my forehead. And we got into the line, and as the line moved, I kept looking, and it kept getting higher and higher as I looked. And finally, Dad bought 4 tickets. He and my mother went and got into a seat. My girl, my date, was already in the seat, and I was still standing there by the guy who run the thing. And he said, "Son, you better go get in your seat. Your girlfriend's already over there. I got to start this thing up." He kind of had to push me. I went over. I stepped into that chair, and it went. And I looked at that seat. It looked like it was plush, and it would kind of hold you down into it. And I got into it, into that thing, and I sat on the seat. I was wrong. That seat held you high so that your center of gravity was over the edge. And I clicked that thing, and my knuckles went white on it, and I felt my butt sliding on that seat downhill, and I rammed my feet into the metal that was in front of them. And if you can call it settling back, as I settled back, it lurched backwards, going up, up, up. That thing was swinging, and I was sitting there like this. And the girl beside me, my date, she said, Ricky, are you all right?" And I know I was as white as an eggshell. And my knuckles were dead white, and my feet were braced against that metal. And I was just staring at the bar. And we kept going up, and it felt like the sky just was weighting down on me. And I looked over, and the town was over there. And I looked down, and there were ants on the ground that were people. And I was still white-knuckled, rammed up against that metal, staring at the bar after I looked down. Up it went until we were at the top, and at the top, that thing just was swinging back and forth, and I felt my butt sliding down, and I jammed my feet even tighter on that metal. And we started down. And then we started back up again. Up to the top and down. The whole time I was just terrified looking there. And I kept hearing somebody screaming. As we went down, the guy at the mechanism that made it run was looking at me. And I said, why are you looking at me? To myself, I was saying, why are you looking at me? Why aren't you looking for whoever's screaming? And we went back up again, back to the top. And the screaming got louder and louder. And we went down and down. And that guy was looking up at me, and I was still thinking, why aren't you looking at the guy? And then I realized it was me screaming, stop this thing and let me off. Can't you hear me? Stop this thing and let me off. So he stopped it when we got down to the bottom, and he lifted that bar, and I shot out into the crowd. I didn't stay to look at anything. And I got to some place, and I leaned against something so that I could get my bearings and my shaking. I was terrified. And then I realized, oh my gosh, what have I just done? And I realized that I had shown the most cowardly action of my life, and I would never live it down. And I was wondering, what in the heck was my girlfriend going to think about this coward who was out there cowering in the crowd trying to stay away from that big old Ferris wheel. So I knew I had to go back. Not something I wanted to do. And I had a couple of bucks in my pocket. So I thought maybe if I want a stuffed animal or something, so I tried, on the way back, I tried these things. I didn't win anything. And I said, I got to face her. So again, I was terrified because I had to face my girlfriend, if you want to call her my girlfriend. And as I got closer to the Ferris wheel, she ran over there and she said, Ricky, are you all right? And I said, I think so. And she said, we were worried about you. We didn't know where you went. And I apologized to her, and she said, if I'd have known you were scared of heights, I would never have asked to go on the Ferris wheel. And I said, well, how were you supposed to know? And my mother touched my shoulder, and she said, are you all right, son? And I said, yeah, I think so. I don't know. Close to tears as I could ever have been. Because I had humiliated myself, and I knew that she would never want to do anything with me again. Well, I'm not sure what happened the rest of the time we were at the fair. I was just living in my humiliation. I couldn't even face her anymore. Dad didn't win the car. So it was a bummer of a night. And he drove her home. I'm sure I must have gotten out because I don't remember anything from that moment on. And every 5 years at a reunion, she'll come up to me and say, been on the Ferris wheel lately? I'll say, not a chance. Will I ever get on the Ferris wheel again? Oh. So, for me, that was a night of terror. Everything around, asking her out, picking her up, and hearing her say, the Ferris wheel. it was just a night full of terror for me. So that's my terror story. But no, my kids tricked me on getting onto a roller coaster one time when they were young. And I stopped going with them to the fair. I didn't really, but I definitely said no to any of those rides. Oh, jeepers. I don't know what it is and why, but going up in that sky. I don't even fly anymore. I used to fly all the time, but I don't fly anymore either. I just have no desire to be up in the air. My feet belong on the ground, and that's where the heck they're going to stay. Wow. I don't know if I covered that to make you feel the terror I felt as a child, but it was a scary night for me. Hope y'all have a good Halloween. Hope y'all got a good laugh out of this, because I tell you, I thought back on this the other day, and I felt that same terror I felt whenever we were going on that Ferris wheel. And for the rest of that day, I don't know. So laugh at the fool. It's okay with me. I'm old enough now I can take it. Take care of yourselves. I hope you're doing well. I hope you have a good Halloween night. God bless you. Until the next time. Bye-bye.